Thank you for staying with us. It's still Plus TV Africa, Nigeria Decide Studio, and we are moving on with the conversation. There have been many series of arguments by top political class and citizens on immunity clause and impeachment. Now, some political class argue that since there are impeachment proceedings for political officials who are found in gross misconduct, there is no need to remove the immunity clause from the Constitution. So should we allow it to stay, or should we make it go?
Well, I guess to help us decide on that, we still have staying with us Babasola Adegbuyi, YPP governorship candidate from Osun State, as well as Adeniyi Kunnu.
Thank you, Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Now, gentlemen, this topic of immunity clause has raised a whole lot of issues. Should it be upheld? Should it be removed? Should it be reviewed? And a whole lot more. But the interesting thing is that the immunity clause is a sharp contrast to the natural law, where we say everybody is equal before the law. What happens to the rule of law when we are discussing immunity clause?
Well, let's begin from the fact that it's an emanation from the British common law, where they believe that the king can do no wrong. And when we had certain documentation, particularly in 1914, that Lord Frederick Lugard led us, all of that actually were the foundation for some of the various constitutions we've had that appears to put the person who leads at a position that is, in my summation, quite vantage. But if we look at the 1999 Constitution as amended, you want to refer to sections 308, and I particularly remember the case between Bola Tinubu and IMD Securities, where the Supreme Court actually gave him the thumbs up. In the sense that it cannot actually be tried because of the office he occupies. That said, I also would like to connect it to the reality that the wheel of justice grinds very slowly. And because it grinds slowly, people don't get hurt. Again, I'd like to remind us that two former governors are in jail as we speak, Joshua Dare and Jolin Yame of Plateau and Benue states respectively. And they simply are accounting for the crimes they committed whilst they were in office. So going forward, the immunity clause may not be the best of constitutional provisions to prevent sitting political office holders from actually getting the gavel smashed in their disfavor. But at the same time, we must understand that it could make them get prevented from doing their work, if at all they have to be taken to courts time and again. I remember very well that Uhuru Kenyatta, the sitting president of Kenya, was actually invited to come to The Hague, and there were outcries. I must say again that the former American president, even the Bushes of this world, they've actually been invited, but who dare you invite them? As a matter of fact, the invitation of Uhuru Kenyatta to The Hague actually was what resulted in the outcry that you cannot leave out George Bush, those who invaded Iraq and made a mess of it and the rest of it all. Whereas you cannot invite those people, you want the Kenya president to come. So if I brought it back home, I must say that there are advantages or disadvantages, but I think strongly that it could indeed be to our great advantages if that particular thing is reviewed, such that a sitting governor, we can always have the Vice Act if at all there is an act of corruption.
So in your scope, how would you now then define the level of revision that we take when we say we are reviewing? Which areas do you think we should now review?
I think strongly that if the allegations brought against the sitting president, the deputy, the governor, and the deputy governor are such that have moved from the level of allegation to confirmed cases in which such crimes were committed, I think whilst the trial is still on for the defense and of course those who are coming in favor of to serve their time at the courts to see things through, then the person who has been accused or perhaps who really need to go to the courts to actually answer for cases against him or her should actually not be put out of office but be temporarily out of office, that the deputy takes charge for that period of time.
All right, let's talk about arguments that are for and against. Now, some people have argued that the immunity clause in the Nigerian Constitution is in total opposition of what is in the American Constitution, where we buy or borrow our democracy from. In fact, they're saying that the Constitution of the U.S. only has a right for certain persons to be treated, certain persons in Georgia to be treated the same way the people in Florida are being treated, and that's more like a citizen's, right. But if we are borrowing democracy from the U.S. and then we are putting a clause that somewhat seems monarchical, or is this really a democracy when certain persons are deemed untouchable? And we know how it is. When a person has so much power, that person might somewhat avert the rule of law. So how do we deal with that?
I like us to understand that the American democracy is in excess of 200 years. Nigeria is a little above 50. We are going to be 59 this year. So do we have to wait till we're 200 to be smart? We may not need to wait till we're 200, but you see, there are processes you do not jumble. A child may not necessarily have to crawl everywhere, but a child has to crawl at some points to walk. The greatest of democracies are replete with histories of bloodshed. The American history is not divorced from such bloodshed. So bringing that into this context, I must say that we perhaps must also understand the historicity of how we evolved politically, in which you'd find that the colonial masters used the laws that they created to subjugate the people then, and those they handed power to didn't see any other alternative to make power something you hand over to the people so that governance can be actually have a human face. Let me say this as we switch gears now, I beg your pardon. The American people fought their way out of British rule. If you check the British people, there were wars, counter wars to get out of the dominance of the Romans. If you look at the evolution of the Ottoman Empire, it's all about people fighting. How much of war did Nigeria fight to get out of the British jugular? That is the question we need to ask. What are the evolution that our politics took, even from amalgamation to 1960? So the realities are there before us. Although we need to be fast-paced because the world doesn't wait, such that such things must be attended to as quickly as possible. But there are certain things we cannot jump over, I should say that. No, if we must get it right, we have to resort to the National Assembly that is so troubled about their self-interest rather than being concerned about the interests of the people that put them in office. I'll tell you a story. A particular lawmaker in Kebbi or Jigawa, since he was appointed, never visited his constituency. And around middle of last year, he went there, I think the third quarter or so, he went there and the people practically held him down. He took the intervention of security forces to get the man to get back to Abuja. He never went back. In Ekiti yesterday. Thank you very much. There's another one. So the point is, see, there has been over the years a deconfiguration of the proper thinking faculties of the electorate of this country. And we will continue to do such advocacies as your platform affords us, so that we can deconscientize them from all of those things they call bad cholesterol of politics that has affected their sensibilities, so that we can get them out of. Let me tell you, it is a challenge that in a country where 51% of ages between 18 and 51 should know better and vote for the person that should do that. You saw Kano yesterday. 99.9% of the people who came out to support the president, he has his right, that has to be said, are young and virile persons. But do they know better? That's the question we hope to answer. Let's talk about good governance, because you've been, talking about it, the fact that our leaders are supposed to be giving good governance. Now, if the concept of good governance is about accountability, transparency, being responsible and effective in your leadership, why are these qualities hardly ever found in Nigeria? And if you have also faltered the fact that a president should not be appointing someone who's supposed to be an umpire in an election he's running in, then what are we doing here? Big question. You're running for office. I mean, if you are going to have to, if you were the governor, you're sitting governor, and you're running for another election, and you have to appoint the
let's say, the local INEC person. What are you doing? You're literally saying this is the man who's going to gain votes for me, in quotes. So what kind of system are we really running? Do we really want to get out of this anytime soon, or we're just going around in circles?
Actually, I'm not saying us getting out of it soon. No, that's just
That's
truth.
real pessimism.
I was about to say that.
I'm not saying that because of the kind of leaders we are actually choosing for ourselves. When we are talking of leaders, we are talking of people who are to lead by example, who have a responsibility on their soldier by leading the people to the right place. But unfortunately, we elect leaders who are only after their own selfish interest. And you can't put someone in a position and he knows that, oh, if I put A in this particular position, it's going to work against me because one way or the other is related to the Senate president or my opposition. At that level, you look at someone who will help you to achieve your own goal. You get my point? That's why I agree with him. The governor or the president should not, for any reason, appoint the chairman of INEC, or at the state level, the chairman of
Who's to do the appointing then?
Well, if the law is reviewed, there was a time the NJC was actually suggested to do that, but they turned it upside down. I think that was done in the period of Jonathan government or before that period. It was done with this constitutional committee, confab, that they suggested, yes.
But I'm curious, how do we also make sure that whoever, whether it be the National Assembly, whether it be the NJC, are not politicized in any way compromised, because you see, some way in this country we find a way to politicize everything. We look at things from three prisms. We look at it from a religious, a political, and an ethnic prism. So can we really be separated from these things if we really want a good Nigeria?
Because you've also faulted that even the composition of our National Assembly, they are not driving issues that are based on ideologies. It's just self-serving.
So how do we get it right?
Okay, thank you. When we talk about the immediate clause, my friend talked about referring to where they draw it from. That's the 1963 Constitution. That remains the best piece of legal documents that can help Nigeria get out of the quagmire and the imbalances that it has suffered over the years. I must say here that if they found it very convenient to take the immunity clause from the 1963 Constitution, and it is in effect in the 1999 Constitution as amended, why do they find it difficult to address the imbalances of the polity by adopting the entirety of that Constitution? Let me say this, it is, in my own estimation, the height of ridiculousness that you'd say the resources underneath the earth belong to the federal government, but the land belongs to the state government. I have not heard such incongruity in trying to express certain policies, especially in the most populous black nation in the world. I think certain things shouldn't be happening in this part because it will mean the laughing stock of the world. So that said, Nigerians themselves can leverage what is called the Citizens' Bill. And that is why I say that we must continue to reconscientize our people to know that everybody is involved. We saw in the news, 600,000 have not collected their PVCs in Abia. 750,000 have not collected their PVCs in Ekiti. You cannot have such laggards complain about suffering if they are not willing to participate in the electoral process of their country.